everyone, and welcome to this special event for our AI community. Today, we have a chat with Josh, who is a founder of Bastion GPT. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown about Bastion GPT and sort of main features and what you think would be helpful for psychologists to know?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, David. And really excited to get to chat with your community. So if you're somewhat familiar with ChatGPT, you're really going to feel right at home with Bastion GPT. What we've done is we've taken the engine that powers ChatGPT and we're hosting it in our secure Microsoft data centers. And we've taken a lot of effort to optimize it to work well specifically for our healthcare and therapy professionals. So all the same things that you can do with ChatGPT. So if you want to summarize your notes or your transcriptions or generate a session structure for a client, any of that thing that you can do with ChatGPT, you're going to be able to do that with Bastion GPT. Only now you don't have to worry about de-identifying any sensitive data or anything like that. And we're really continually adding lots of new features and functionalities all the time. So last month, we officially went live with our secure audio transcription feature. Just
Right.
a few weeks ago, we increased the amount of text that can be sent to Bastion GPT based on the feedback from our therapy community. Yeah, a few weeks ago, we added the ability to upload PDFs. That was a big request, and just last week we got the ability for programmers to integrate Bastion GPT directly into their therapy apps and tools. So the number one driver for all this is really how often the features are requested by our users. So if the community has ideas for how AI can help make lives easier, make you more effective therapist, certainly reach out to us, and we're more than happy to add that to our roadmap.
Amazing. That all sounds very exciting. Lots going on by the sounds of it.
Absolutely.
Uh, I get the sense that it was sort of designed for the US market. Is there anything you think Australian users should know about how Bastion GPT works?
Yeah, certainly. So we started out with a focus on the U.S. healthcare market, quickly grew to include many U.S. therapists. We really didn't see that coming, but we heard loud and clear this was incredibly helpful for some of the work that they're trying to do. And quickly the word spread to other countries. And we've actually got quite a few users in Australia. Australia is certainly well represented in our user base. And one of the really great things with Bastion GPT being founded with security and compliance at the forefront is all the steps that we've taken to be secure and compliant in the US have some really great alignment with most all of the other international best practices and regulations. So looking at specifically Privacy Act and the APPs, while Bastion GPT alone, we can't make you compliant, but we can help support you in being compliant with all of those requirements. So
Hmm.
nothing that we do here at Bastion GPT is going to keep you from being compliant with the Privacy Act and the APPs.
Wonderful. Well, do you mind just elaborating on that distinction? Because you just mentioned about we can't make you compliant, but work with you. Can you maybe me a little bit more explanation of what that means,
Yeah,
please?
certainly. So, and I can actually go ahead and share some visuals out here that we've put together for some of the different compliance regulations. So
Thank
there's a
you.
number of things that are specific to the APP that we can
Hmm.
certainly speak to.
So,
So things like how we disclose any data, how we handle the data, not reselling the data to third
mhm.
parties and things like that. But there's
Sure.
other things that we can't control. So, for instance, if you give Bastion GPT your login and password to a patient, and they're using that, and they're seeing other patient data that's in there, that's
Hmm.
obviously something that's not going to fall under those foundational principles.
So,
So we've taken all the steps possible to help make sure everything that we can do on our end, we're
hmm.
going to be compliant. But also noting that there's a lot of nuance even within different regions of Australia. We're more than happy to sit down and understand some of your unique requirements, either within the APPs or just within your own particular risk decisions to understand and have those conversations around how exactly you can be compliant, what you're comfortable with. We
Hmm.
do operate in different data centers.
Hmm.
So Australia being one of those. So if you've got a set of requirements where you say, hey, I need the data to be in Australia and only in
Hmm.
Australia, We can work with you to make sure that's enabled for your account. And
Sure.
some of the caveats. So the big caveat there is if we lock you down to data storage only in Australia,
Hmm.
then should the Australia data center have an issue where they go down,
Sure.
Bastion GPT would be unavailable.
Sure.
Thankfully, these are very, very reliable data centers, but every now and then things can happen. So
Of
I just want
course.
to make sure people go into that with a good awareness of all the different risks.
Sure. Of course. No, that's fantastic. Thank you. But can I just clarify that ability to be limited to the Australian data center? Because I think many psychologists will be quite um, motivated to want to do that because that's how they see the privacy regulations requiring of them to keep the data in Australia. So is that at every level of membership, or is that only for like enterprise or
Yeah, yep,
high
certainly.
levels?
So that is for all of our primary levels of membership. So Bastion GPT Professional is where the vast majority of our users are sitting. Really, yeah, really great for the smaller practices. With enterprise, we're looking at the 1,000+ employee companies that need different sets of controls. But
Hmm.
yeah, both the professional and the enterprise, all those are able to be locked down to just one particular country. So just
Sure.
Eastern Australia in this case.
Sure. Okay. But then are there other levels that then wouldn't? So can I just clarify like
Mhm.
at what point there is and isn't? Because I think it's probably quite important to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have capability to do a lot of advanced customizations, or we've got
Yep.
some users that have very specific use cases where they
Sure.
want to use very specific models.
Hmm.
And in some cases, those models aren't available in, for example, the Australia data center. So
Sure.
if it's something really new that hasn't been incorporated all different data centers, or if it's something that is not quite past our validation for being
Hmm.
appropriately secure, then sometimes
Sure.
we will sit on that, and that could take a month or two for us to be comfortable with a new feature or new technology.
Sure. Sure.
So if there's some brand new cutting edge feature where, hey, we really want to send images of diagrams or generate diagrams based on certain things, those are the types of things that can take longer for us to push out. But
Sure.
anything, the way we've designed is anything that is available in the professional subscription.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about if you elect to just use Australia as
Hmm.
your source of data, everything would stay within there. It's only
Sure.
when you have those conversations where you want something very bespoke or very unique,
Yeah.
that's when we have to get into the nuances of what's going to stay in Australia versus what's not ready yet.
Sure. Wonderful. Okay, so just to be clear, so the psychologist needs to contact Bastion GPT once they subscribe and request that their data be limited to the Australian centres to follow that up.
Absolutely. Yep, yep. You
Yeah,
can send us an email. We've got our support page that calls it out. Just let us know, hey, I'm going to be using this.
yeah,
Do wait, it should be less than 24 business hours when that comes in. We
sure.
are based in the US, so it might be a little bit of a time zone lag, but
Yeah,
within a day.
sure.
Wait for confirmation to confirm, okay, we've got your data locked down to just Australia.
Yeah,
And then once you get that email from us, and then you're good to go, and you can have that assurance that your data is going to remain in our Australian data center.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, in terms of the particular benefits to psychologists, I know that's quite nuanced and specialized, but I guess that's what the community are really motivated to know a bit about. Yeah, just wondering if you can share any insights, please.
Yeah, it's great. We've got hundreds of psychologists using Bastion GPT now every day. I've sat and had some one-on-ones with myself and with our product team to hear some really incredible, really creative ways that folks are using it, and that's been a really big influence to how we
Hmm.
tune our AI models to make
Hmm.
it more powerful than what you're going to get with some of these off-the-shelf type of models.
Hmm.
So some of the big use cases, summarizing sessions. One of
Hmm.
the big pieces of feedback we got was with our traditional healthcare community with medical doctors. Sometimes these sessions were 10-15 minutes max, and that's definitely
Hmm.
not the case with the therapy sessions. That was a big driver for us to extend the amount of text that we can store, the amount of data that we can store when we're
Sure.
trying to summarize some of these larger sessions. Also got a lot of feedback that these notes need to oftentimes be converted to fit certain templates.
Sure.
So that's been a big use case where you can go and actually describe in your prompts exactly what did you want it to look like.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a really common use case, or even just converting notes for different audiences. So we've
Hmm.
got a faith-based practice, for example, that automatically generates 3 different documents. One
Yeah.
that is sent to the patient with all of the religious affirmations there. One that goes
Right.
to insurance. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, that,
Yeah.
that insurance is just the facts of the therapy
Yeah.
session.
Sure.
And then one for the therapist record. So it includes
Mm.
extra detail and notes for what that therapist needs to put further attention on in future sessions and things like that.
Wow.
It's very easy for you to use just natural language to describe
Mm.
exactly what you want and have it give you an output.
Right.
So
Okay. That is very interesting.
and
And
we're
thought,
hearing new use cases every day. So
yeah,
that
I'm
never
sure.
ceases to amaze me.
I'm sure. I mean, I've just only been thinking about use for generating one type of notes, but yeah, to have that ability to convert it into all sorts of different notes and I suppose reports for different purposes would be quite exciting.
Absolutely. And that's really one of the big benefits of Bastion GPT is you look at something like a Chat GPT or Gemini, they're a really good Swiss Army knife of being
Hmm.
pretty good at everything.
Yeah.
But that really comes at a cost of not doing certain skills expertly. So
Hmm.
acting like a psychologist assistant or a scribe or things like that. So that's
Hmm.
where our approach has really been take those foundational AI models and
Hmm.
have our AI engineers train it to work better
Hmm.
in that healthcare or that therapy context.
Hmm.
So we're using different AI models. We're determining, hey, you're asking to do these things. So these are the specific AI settings that
Hmm.
you need to use or different AI models that are going to give you the best results.
Hmm.
And
Brilliant.
certainly as new models emerge, we're continually to stay up to date.
Yeah.
One of the big fears or frustrations is every week there's a new headline that, hey, this new service is beating ChatGPT these
Yeah.
things and folks don't want to have to sit there and have 6 or 7 different subscriptions that they're going to have to keep up to date with and pay
Yeah.
or realize what's better to do this thing versus the other thing. And that's where our
Hmm.
approach has really been to simplify it for our users to say subscribe to Bastion GPT. We're going to
Hmm.
give you the best of what's out there,
Yeah.
in a way where you're not having to subscribe to multiple things or figure out what's the best AI to use for my specific purposes.
Wonderful. Yeah, it does seem like it's such a fast moving space. Every 5 minutes there's a new tool and the board game's changing completely. So I'm sure your engineers are having to work on overdrive, no doubt.
Absolutely. And it's really confusing for end users to understand really what these different AI companies, they all say, hey, they're secure.
Yeah.
But many of these services, well, they take your data and they incorporate it into the AI model. And so there's been
Yeah.
cases where it's possible to actually extract that out from these
Hmm.
models like
Yeah.
ChatGPT. So, we don't want details of our own, therapy sessions to be exposed out there to everyone out on the internet. So
Yeah.
one of the things we incorporate is to make sure all of our models, all of that data needs to stay private to us. We're not
Hmm.
going to share it with OpenAI, the company that runs ChatGPT or any of these other
Hmm.
services. We're not going to resell the data or do
Hmm.
anything like that that could
Hmm.
compromise any of our customers' reputations or customize any of our patient health information that they put into.
Sure. So just to be clear, then I know we've talked about this a fair bit, but just to be clear, then when the psychologists are entering in information into Bastion GPT, it's not going into training other AI. It's not accessible in any other way by other users. So maybe there's a degree of assurance that what is being done stays private, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely essential for us.
Wonderful. Now, in terms of how well Bastion GPT does with refining and re-entering prompts, and trying to sort of tweak their requests or have it learn from what one's already said. Could you perhaps speak to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very similar to ChatGPT. So if you're used to some of the benefits and limitations there, then you'll see something largely similar, but I would say slightly improved. So
Mm-hmm.
you can
Hmm.
still ask it to refine or modify based on, hey, if you want a longer or a shorter response, or you want bullet points instead of paragraphs, or those types of things. But we have made a number of adjustments on the back end to reflect a
Okay.
little bit more of the professional and succinct responses that are
Mm-hmm.
customary and in a healthcare or therapy setting.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a quick access feature for prompts on the right-hand side of our tool. Uh, big feature request from our end users there, where you can save all of your favorite prompts and quickly call those up in a new chat. So some of these prompts can be really long and detailed, and you're explaining just exactly what you'd like to do. And if
Mm-hmm.
you use that with every single patient that you're seeing, That's a quick time saver that can, at the end of the day, save you quite a bit of time and make sure all that text is there in a convenient way. And
Amazing.
then our staff's also very happy to work with you to solve your problems or refine prompts. So if something's not quite working exactly like you think it would, or hey, you've got a great prompt and you think, is there any way to make it better? We love to have the conversation because we love to help people, but we also gain a lot of good insight into how people are using that tool. So we can share some of those good use cases and make sure we're continually refining our tool to provide better, sharper, higher accuracy responses.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. That's very, very useful. Now, in terms of strategies for inputs for prompts in order for Bastion GPT to excel, like to do the best it can do, any particular pro tips perhaps around that?
Yeah, there's certainly something that it seems like every day, every week, there's a new strategy or technique coming out. In some cases, we actually apply those techniques behind the scenes to optimize the performance, and in many cases, well beyond what you're going to get with like a Chat GPT. What we've got on the screen here are just some common prompt techniques
Yeah.
that I certainly use to reference. I've been using Bastion GPT every day for the past year. And I'm still finding myself every day I'm learning a little bit something new or how I can do better. So it certainly is a skill that is learned over time. But these are some really good examples to go out and try. Oftentimes, if you got just a quick ask, you don't need the formality of putting all these things in here. If you just need a kind of quick and dirty answer, but if you've got a complicated request or one that you're wanting to extract the maximum value of, or a request that you're asking many times over, going through this process can actually yield you a higher quality response.
Amazing. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but and you could certainly provide this to us afterwards if you prefer, but in terms of how a psychologist might use this, can you think of some examples just to make this a little bit less abstract for them of something they might want to do? So might be, maybe, I don't know whether it's chorus or, oh, you're going into that next.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a handy slide on that one as well.
Brilliant.
So this is an example where you're just highlighting at a high level. If you want a report to be written based on your specific notes that you're writing, or even a transcript. So you can start out again with that prompt framework, where the first step and one of those was tell it how to act. So in this case, it might be Australian neuropsychologist.
Wow.
And in this case, where the next one is we're actually providing, one of the strategies is provide an exact sample of your report. So if you've got a copy that really matches exactly a really good use case of this is the right length, this is the right tone that I like, this is the right everything about it is a good representation of how I want the report to be written. You can actually provide that entire report, even though it might be a lot of data. You can still provide that entire report and say, hey, take all this data and use this as an example. And so in that case, you would just paste in your report right there and then tell it, hey, thank you, please provide the report. And then you're giving the AI further instructions. So once the report's provided, you can mimic that same structure. And then you can, in this next section here, just report all the different things that you want. So say I want bullet points, I want to only reference certain subjects, hey, stay away from other certain subjects, anything that you can imagine you can put there. Or as you're generating it, you realize I really liked it, but I wish it would be would do something different. You can be as specific as you'd like and put that all here. So basically, you take all of this data, copy and paste it into your prompt, and then hit enter, and you're off to the races. The AI is going to tell you, thank you, please provide the neuropsych report. And you can then paste that in, and if it generates it, and you're like, I really like it, but I wish you would focus more on the subject's anxiety, then just type that in there, and boom, it'll focus more on that element.
Sure.
We also have a website out there. It's at BastionGPT.com/library, where some of our favorite prompts that we've got out there that we've heard. We've got some of those linked here to the right, and some really good showcases of the different what the technology is capable of. So in some cases, this might not be an exact match what you're looking for, but it really gives you a good idea of different tools and techniques that you can use to get the most out of your experience with Bastion GPT. So for all of these, we give you an example that you can just copy and paste into Bastion GPT, and we also show you a example of it being used in the real world with, of course, fake patient data, but yeah, exactly how it would be used and what type of quality of content that you're going to get out of it as well.
Fantastic. That all sounds brilliant. The one thing though that makes me kind of curious about, I'm wondering if you've ever heard how it's gone with interpreting scores of different assessments. Has that been something you've heard about?
Yeah, but so scores of assessment is one that it does fairly well on. Interestingly, it's amazing that AI does so many things where I'm like, oh, there's no way it's going to be this smart, and it blows it out of the park. Whereas there's certain things that are just very basic, particularly things like math, where for some reason it struggles with it. And so a lot of it is, in some scenarios it works amazing, in some scenarios it just doesn't. So for instance, one example is if you've got a form where you've got a date of birth, but you need to convert it to a report where you list age. That should be a fairly basic. If you got the birth, the age. And in most cases, it does great, but that's one of those areas where occasionally it can get things wrong.
Sure.
And so, if it's looking at math and adding certain things, it could be an issue. But I do know we have quite a few folks that are taking those raw score reports and using them to help generate responses and observations. But because there is always that potential for the AI to make a mistake, and particularly given its weaknesses with addition, subtraction, math, and things like that, definitely fully encourage you to review any responses that these AI generate, just to make sure it's in line with what the underlying data says.
Of course. No, I've always got to have that human element and quality assurance side of things to make sure what's being produced is usable, accurate. Absolutely. I just wanted to also just clarify, so if you don't mind, on the previous slide, in terms of the process for which one would, say, generate a report, just to be clear, one could have a summary, but could one have other, say, intake or initial assessment information and load in your template report, and then it would then produce the applying of the new client's information to the template to then produce the report, just to be clear.
Absolutely. That's a very, very common use case, in which case, you would just change some of the wording. So if it's not a neuropsych report, or if you're not providing a neuropsych report and you're wanting a different type of document, just replace that text and give it a spin.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. That's all I had for that slide. Now, just in terms of the user privacy and data security, you've obviously spoken about. Sounds like it's HIPAA compliant, data held in Australia, Australian privacy principles. So I think we've kind of covered that. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on that, but
and one thing I might note, one of the earlier approaches before we had our partnership with Microsoft for some of our AI technologies. What many companies try to do is they basically said, hey, we're going to take sensitive data that you put in there and we're going to try to de-identify that. And that works great 99.9% of the time. But in that instance, if that was the approach that we took with Bastion GPT, we would still be ending up with dozens of breaches per day, and that's just really unacceptable to us. We really need 100%. So definitely want to keep that in mind, that a lot of these de-identification technologies, if that's the approach that people are taking, either manual of, I try to go in and remove any sensitive data, or relying on these automated systems, they're often unreliable. I would have loved for that to work, but unfortunately the technology is just not there. And that's where really we have our approach of an environment where you can feel free to put personal health information there, or other types of sensitive data, and trust that it's going to be secured and compliant with what you need it to do.
Brilliant. Is there external auditing as well, and process sort of management for any skeptics out there, I suppose?
Absolutely. So we do provide on our website. You can go to the security tab there, and we provide information from a third party on our various controls. We also do all the regular best practice standards around. We have an internal team that regularly tests cybersecurity. We bring in third parties to regularly test the cybersecurity. And we've also designed the solution to have, we call it a minimal attack surface, to where there's really not any chinks in the armor of our security defenses where bad guys could get in and steal any of that data. So certainly we've got a number of different documents that folks can reference, and so we're more than happy to share some of those. We have a fair amount of that public on our website, but some of the documentations, if we do want to provide that, we do have to have folks sign a non-disclosure agreement,
Sure.
which is pretty quick and easy. But yeah, we're more than happy to share that as well.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And yeah, just finally, in terms of Bastion GPT having ways to prevent generating harmful or misleading content, can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so that is a major issue with the latest generation of AI at the moment. So these
Yeah.
large language models such as Bastion GPT or Google Gemini, Chat GPT, they all have the potential to produce errors. And so again, we talked on that a little bit. We need to account for that possibility and never really blindly trust what AI generates. But all that being said, technology is getting better every single day. And we've taken quite a few steps to minimize those issues. So an example, if Bastion GPT sees a request to summarize a transcript or convert a set of notes to a particular report, we on the back end are going to apply certain settings that will both provide you the best results, but also minimize those hallucinations. Now, for certain other requests, like let's say we need you need Bastion GPT to brainstorm some differential diagnoses or come up with some creative solutions to address a problem. If we applied those same settings, we would get terrible results. So in those cases, we detect, hey, you're looking for something very creative, and we're going to loosen that up where you're going to have some more hallucinations, but where we identify, hey, this is a use case where that might be more appropriate, we'll certainly do that. And so that's where we've gone through all the different hundreds of use cases to make sure it's a well-tuned a service versus what you might get out there with like a Chat GPT where it's going to just literally toe the line of kind of your average response. Now there's also other forms of harmful content. So looking at things like racial or stereotyping bias, we have struck I'd call a happy medium at the moment, but we're of course constantly striving to get better because this is a major issue. You might have seen Google Gemini in the news recently, where it was basically refusing to generate images of white people.
Right.
Other models, they go the other way and really amplify the inappropriate biases. And so the industry is really trying to figure out that happy medium. And a lot of that, some of the issue is this AI was trained on mostly public internet data, and of course that's a mirror of society, and there's a lot of things in society. So there's a lot of content out there that we don't want reflected in our AI's output, and so that's some of the work that we've done to take it a step further and really carve out the data that would be inappropriate in a context of providing therapy. So continually striving to get better and really looking at implementing those leading practices to help reduce the bias, but without harming the quality of the data as a result.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. That all sounds like a lot of work to get to a point that we'll be able to manage that better. But I'm sure that's something we'll see better developments on, I suppose, in the coming weeks and months, considering it is such a priority for the industry.
Absolutely.
So I guess maybe before we wrap up with it, any particular demonstrations you wanted to otherwise do that you think might be of interest? Any other sort of final thoughts?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. We are more than happy to jump on a call with current or potential customers to help walk through. This is a brand new technology, so we realize there's a lot of unknowns. And we really get a lot out of that because we're of course helping you to provide a better service, but also helps us inform where we need to improve some of our content and our communications, or where we can build out our tool to be even better. So definitely welcome if you've got any questions on, is something possible? Hey, why isn't this happening? Or where's the industry going with certain things? Certainly not a bother on our end. We love to get the questions. We love to talk about AI in a healthcare and therapy context.
No, that's great. Another question I guess just came to mind, and maybe we'll leave it at this. In terms of the user's ability to just customize it to their own modality, preferred ways of working, is that something that you see as a kind of inbuilt functionality that psychologists can do?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So we have on the right hand side of our bar, we've got different prompts that you can say, where you can say, in one case, we might have a reply to an email, and so in that case, you can say, "Hey, be very friendly, build lots of rapport, and
Hmm.
feel free to extrapolate on things, be very informative." You can build all of those things into how you want that reply to go for those types of requests.
Hmm.
Whereas other types of requests, you might want to get very specific and procedural. So I've got this exact form that is going to insurance or going to a particular area, and it needs to follow a very different tone.
Hmm.
So that's where folks can utilize that. And if they want to change it up, you can just click that new chat button here in the upper left and start with a
Hmm.
fresh thread with new guidelines and new tones or however you want it to respond. It's very flexible.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great. I think it all sounds really amazing, super exciting, certainly well considerate of many of the priorities for Australian psychologists in terms of the data security and management of client data. So that all sounds really exciting. And thank you so much for your time, Josh. And yeah, maybe we'll leave it there for today.